What do you say we wipe the stench off that UConn football debacle and talk a little recruitment updates for basketball? You're locked on UConn.
You are Locked On Yukon, your daily podcast on the Yukon Huskies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On UConn your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube as part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Before we dive into today's show, just want to take a quick moment to ask for a small favor. If you're enjoying the content here, please take a second to subscribe to the show and follow the audio versions wherever you listen to podcasts. It helps the show grow, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate your support. Thanks so much for being part of the Locked On UConn community. Your support means everything to me. We really appreciate it. Today's episode is brought to you by Ultimate College Football HC. It's a brand new mobile game that is completely free and has no ads and is 100% playable offline. Use the promo code LOCKEDONCFB, all caps, inside the game store to receive a free boost to your program. Begin your coaching legacy today. All right, so yes, we had a rough weekend with college football. College football in general as a whole was awesome. I had a great time watching some of these games. I saw a great post from Stores South talking about how, Florida State losing kind of made him happy, but then BC winning, he's kind of sitting there all, it's a conundrum, right? It's a catch-22. So yes, it was nice to see Florida State lose, but also it sucks to have BC be the reason why they did lose. But let's get away from the college football for a day or two, and let's talk through some of these recruiting updates that I'm starting to receive. Some people have tagged me on a few posts. I've done a little bit of due diligence on my end to kind of go over. I have one new recruit that I want you guys to take a look at that UConn is actually going to an open practice for, and we'll talk about what he brings to the table. And then we'll provide some updates on Malik Thomas and Braylon Mullins, as well as some of the other targets in the larger picture of recruiting for Dan Hurley and his Huskies for 2025. So let's dive into the first recruit we're going to talk about today, Braden Burrys. He is a talented shooting guard from Eleanor Roosevelt High School in Arizona, I believe, is drawing serious attention from some of the bigger names in college basketball, including his home state of Arizona. But Burries will be hosting coaches from an impressive lineup of schools at an open practice. Among them, of course, UConn, Duke, Kentucky, Alabama, Louisville, Kansas, Tennessee, UCLA, Oregon, SMU, USC, and of course, our beloved Huskies. This is an absolute game changer for this kid. He's a 5-star, but recently kind of shot up some boards, so he's really impressed as of late. He has evolved into a well-rounded player with the ability to score from anywhere on the court. He's also 6'4", which is kind of is the profile of what Dan Hurley and his staff look for in terms of these prototypical combo guards. He can run the court. He can run his team. He has the physical attributes to dominate at the point, but also can play the off guard too. So let's keep an eye on him as a rising star as the recruitment battle heats up, especially with UConn being in the building for an open practice. They're not traveling cross country just to kind of say hello. They truly are interested in his abilities to see what we can do here. I think he is an intriguing talent. Again, I always point to the size of these players versus what they've done in high school. And I had a former I did have a former whether high school coach and now is in college talk about how when you're evaluating these players from high school to the pros, it's a little easier from that step from then the college to the NBA level, especially when these kids are young. You have athletic freaks like, LeBron James in high school was easily could transition to the pros because of his physicality. Then you look at some of the guys that UConn has on their roster now. These longer athletic kids who are growing into their adult sized bodies, and they have the ability to expand on their athleticism with the type of great coaching they get. And so with a kid like Burries, who's 6'4", I think he's we talk about this. It's always so difficult to understand if he's a true 6'4" or if he's 6'2.5", 6'3", and then we're talking about a kid that's a little undersized. But I'm going from what I've seen, what I've heard. This kid's a legit 6'4". He can get downhill. He can shoot at it. He's a very capable shooter. I wouldn't call him, a 3-point specialist, but he can shoot the rock. He can also get by you. He can get downhill in a hurry. Always interested in high school kids when they transition to that finishing at the rim aspect, because we just talked about their physicality. When they start playing bigger players, it's easy to do that in high school because you have the ability to kind of dominate them from a physical standpoint. But going to that next level, does he have more things in his bag to help him transition from high school to the pros? So these are all things that UConn is deciphering, but they're clearly interested in him. And he has all the right tools and the pedigree that UConn is looking for. So we will keep you updated on their interest and do a deeper dive when things get serious, whether we're offering, whether there's a potential for an official visit. So coming up on the show, we're going to talk about an update on Malik Thomas, as well as Braylon Mullins and the rest of the gentlemen who have been offered by Dan Hurley and his crew, coming up after this. What's up, Husky fans? I want to take a moment to give you a heads up on a brand new mobile game that I think you're going to love as much as I do. Ultimate College Football HC. In this amazing game and simulation, you get to step into the shoes of a head coach and lead your college football program to glory. Can you imagine being the head coach of the UConn Huskies? Probably could have done a better job than we had last week, right? From recruiting players and hiring coaching staff to overseeing training camps and handling school scholarships, you're in control of every crucial detail of your program. It's all in your hands. Will you be able to handle that pressure? I don't know. And here's what I really love about the game. You're responsible for calling offensive plays during the season. Your strategy will not only determine the success of your football program, but will shape the future and legacy of everything. Until College Football HC is completely free, has no ads, and is 100% playable offline. You can go on and play as much as you want, when you want. And of course, you have a special offer from Locked On Huskies, Locked On UConn. Use the promo code Locked On CFB, all caps, inside the game store to receive a free boost for your program. Make sure to take advantage of this perk, as we will get your team off to a great start. So download the game. Just visit ultimate-cfb.com, ultimate-cfb.com, or look it up on the app stores. Ultimate College Football HC. Begin your coaching legacy today. All right, you're back on Locked On UConn. Yeah, so recruiting updates. Braden Burrys is a name to watch. We'll get you some updates on him as they arise. Another one that's come back around the pike, kind of a boomerang, and probably maybe never left. You know, these things are fluid. I think one of the things that I can tell you about when you're covering college athletics, especially in today's day and age, recruiting never stops. Transfer portal stuff never stops when that season's on. And really kind of, it seems like conference realignment never stops. So in the recruitment aspect of this, Malik Thomas, what seemed like he was an absolute lock for UConn, took a visit, everything went well. Him and Dan Hurley had a nice little exchange. You know, apparently there was a date that was set to let all the schools know when Malik is going to be making his decision. But I think like anybody that's ever been in sales or anybody that's ever been in any type of deal making, the longer a deal goes on, the harder it is to close. So the more time that passes, the more time the client has, the more time the prospect has to rethink how they're going to spend their money. And so it's kind of usually the closer's job to essentially alleviate them of that thinking and get the deal to sign. And so we haven't done that with Malik Thomas, and I don't think that's anyone's fault. It's just my instinct to question whether or not they're in the driver's seat with that. But then we hear that Malik Thomas, a 5-star basketball prospect, as you guys know, and if you don't know, I'll recap that for you. He's a 6'4" guard from Pittsburgh area. He was again thought to be a UConn lock, but things kind of went a little sour, according to some reports. Could be true, could not be true, but as of today, he is inviting 4 prominent programs to an open workout, and we are on that list. So the deal is not dead, as they say. Among those other programs UConn will be contending with is Arkansas with John Calipari, Pittsburgh with Jeff Capel, and Kansas State with Maurice Tang. Am I saying his name right? Jerome, that's right. So he's going to head into his final high school season with overtime elite in Atlanta and play out the year. But he is expected to make a decision sometime in, I think, October 5th or 6th was the date, because he does have a visit with Alabama on September 27th and then an official visit with Arkansas on October 5th. So it'll likely be after the Arkansas visit. Don't love that Arkansas is last, where they can kind of utilize all of their John Calipari chicanery to get this kid to come down to Fayetteville. But as I've mentioned millions of times on this show already, with recruiting, you can't even look at if you lose out on a recruit as a true loss. Back in the day, like, remember when Jim Calhoun used to got all pissed off at a press conference because of the Ryan Gomes thing? When you lost Ryan Gomes, he was gone. Like, there was no chance that he was coming to UConn after he committed to Providence. If you lose Malik Thomas to Arkansas and he's not a one and done and he stays and he's not happy with his role at Arkansas and John Calipari, et cetera, you can always get him in the transfer portal. These things happen every year. It's why I think they even make some visits that they know that they're maybe third or fourth option, because of a lot of myriad of reasons, whether that's proximity to the kid's place or home, proximity to the region that he grew up in, and the people that he trusts that aren't going to be coming with him to stores. And so also NIL, you know what I mean? Like, I think that's always the elephant in the room. And I know Dan Hurley doesn't want to talk about that stuff, but the reality is, I know for a fact that UConn gives good NIL money. They just don't do it for everybody because they don't want to be known for that. And I totally get why they do that for their brand. And I think it's a wise choice, because then you get the type of kids that you want. You don't just get guys who are going to come in and check it out. But yeah, I think that's always something to factor in, is that no matter how many kids you recruit, there's always an opportunity of them boomeranging back around, especially when the transfer portal season happens after next season. They'll say, well, who did we recruit that we think is not happy with? And they're talking about that all through the year. That's not tampering. That's just understanding the market, right? Hearing through the grapevine that such and such player at X university is not happy with the coaching staff. Okay, we recruited him. He liked it. Did we think it was a fit? Yes. What was his NIL value? Cool. Let's see if we can get him. Let's see if we can have a conversation. So that's always what happens. So I'm interested to see what Malik Thomas does, but I'm not closing the door on him, even if he commits someplace else. And I hope you guys understand that with any of the kids that we're going to talk about in the next segment. So just so you know, college football is, of course, back. SEC, ACC, Big 10, Big 12. You can get it all from Locked On stable of college experts by subscribing to the Locked On College Football Podcast. Who has a chance to make the playoff? What teams will cause chaos in their new conferences? Everything you need to know all in one place. Be sure to follow and subscribe to Locked On College Football, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Coming up, we'll get an update on Braylon Mullins and other recruits that UConn has offered. What are the stories there? And we'll be right back. Ever hit that afternoon slump and just can't seem to push through? Trust me, I've been there. That's when I reach for a 5-hour energy. It's my go-to for tackling that endless to-do list or powering through a podcast or a workout with motivational when my motivation is absolutely at zero. And whether I'm catching the big game or staying up late, it keeps me alert and in the zone. Plus, with zero sugar in flavors like watermelon and tropical burst, there's something for everyone. Head over to the website where you can even customize your own 12 or 24 pack. So what are you waiting for? Try 5-hour energy today. All right, let's talk. You're back on Locked On UConn. Let's talk Braylon Mullins. Braylon Mullins is the type of kid that I absolutely want Dan Hurley to go after, and he has. And things are heating up a little bit with Braylon. I won't lie to you guys. I got really bad news about our ability to grab Braylon Mullins. And I'm going to get confirmation on this. I know some of you guys are trust me on this stuff. Some people don't. That's fine. But I have quite a few contacts in college basketball, and this is one of those where you'd be happy to be wrong. And so when I did my last, I think I did a segment on Braylon and wanting him as my number one recruit. That's my number one recruit, not Dan Hurley. Let's just be clear about that. I did a top 3 of who I wanted. I wanted him, Nico Vandalo, and Eric Ryby. And I got a text from a really good friend of mine who is super plugged in the Midwest and actually very plugged into the Indiana program. I won't say how. I got a text that said, B. Mullins will not end up in Connecticut, my friend. I promise you that. And it was at midnight on a Friday. And so I was just like, I woke up the next morning and I was like, that sucks. But listen, if I follow that conversation, he said, not for sure, but they will offer the farm for that kid, and he's not leaving the Midwest. He said, mark my words. Those type of kids don't leave. That was his comment to me. But he did say he can absolutely play. Is one of the best players from Indiana since Kyle Guy, who went to Virginia and won a national championship there. And I was an absolute savage in college. Wasn't a great pro, but who cares? So anyway, just giving it. I want to pour cold water on it now so that I can be happy if I find out a few hours from now when my guy's supposed to get back to me on Braylon Mullins on our chances. And the reason why I ask is because, and listen, there's no wasted trips. Dan Hurley and his staff, I don't know who handles the in-home visits, if it's him, if it's Kamani, are going to visit Braylon. And so I texted my source there and said, hey, this is happening. In your opinion, are they wasting their time? And he wrote back to me, I'll find out for you. So, but he feels like Indiana is going to go all in and pay the kid whatever it takes. So take that for what it is. Just giving you my my info. I love Braylon. I hope UConn is a serious option for him, because I feel like he's the type of kid that is the epitome of what UConn basketball has created over the last few years, and as a continuation of the Jim Calhoun era to now the Dan Hurley era of having these guys that come in and kind of just, back in the day, you always had who was the next Husky wing. It went from Danielle to Ray to Karan, to Rudy Gay. Like, there was always that kind of big athletic Richard Hamilton, these power wings that were absolute NBA stars. And now it seems like Dan Hurley has created kind of like guard university between Steph Castle and Cam Spencer and Tristan Newton and Andre Hawkins, Andre Jackson, just like the pipeline of his NBA guys and guys who he's developed is starting to kind of form. And so that's kind of where I look at some of these recruits and stuff like that. So, so does he desire to play outside of his state or even the Midwest? We'll stay tuned for that. But he is also getting an in-house visit from none other than Indiana tomorrow, and UConn's going Thursday. So hope Dan Hurley does a fantastic job and pulls his best blue chips, and talks about, I'm kidding. There's no dark money anymore in college basketball, but I hope they do a good job of figuring out what this kid wants and meeting him in the middle, and that it's a good fit. So, but there's also other targets. And before we let you go, I really want to talk through a couple of them, right? So there's Chris Seanock. He's a 5-star center from Link Academy, I think via New Orleans. Link Academy is in Missouri. It's pretty famous for having kids go there and funnel them off to D1 schools of every level. Then Eric Ryby, 4-star, 7-footer from Maryland, fresh off his Kansas visit. Saw some pictures there. Don't know how the visit went. Hopefully it went not so great. I feel like all the official visits go well. Although there is that one time, again, I hope Charlie Villanueva can ever come on the show to do justice to this story about how he visited Kansas and was all set to go with Bill Self, but there was a tornado while he was there, and he was just like, man, I'm not coming here. So Eric, there are tornadoes in Kansas. Don't go there. Then there's Tande Yasafu, 5-star power forward from California, with an official visit in a few weeks here, 17 days to be exact, on September 20th. We've talked about Nico Bondalo, one of my guys who I think would be a great fit for UConn, 6'10" power forward. He visited UConn on August 30th and is rumored to have gone well, like they all do. And then there's the whole kind of like Caden Lewis, Malik Thomas stuff. We talked about Meleek earlier and how we're not out of the running just yet, but I feel like we're kind of waiting to see what domino drops there. That could be one of those who accepts first and who signs first between a Caden Lewis, who's a 5-star combo guard from DC. Caden's more. I feel like Caden's more of a combo than Malik. I think Malik is a straight scorer. Like I no disrespect to him, I think that's fantastic. But when I think of what you're asked to do at UConn, do we need guys who are just absolute dogs who can shoot the rock? Jordan Hawkins comes to mind. I don't remember Jordan ever really running the offense the way even Cam did last year when he needed to step in. But I know the preference is to have a guy who can do both. And I think Caden Lewis, even though he's a 4-star versus Malik is a 5, is that version. So we'll see. I think again, I'm really looking forward to how this all shakes out. For those of you who want us to go after some of the taller guys because we're losing Samson and there's maybe there's some transfers. Also remember, regardless of how we recruit, the transfer portal opens every year. Sometimes we lose people, sometimes we don't. And we didn't lose too many people from our team this year. And that's the reason why I feel like we're offering the type of players that we are, because I think there's probably an expectation that of some of the wings based off of playing time and based off of opportunity that they'll end up leaving at some point. But we don't know that yet. We haven't even played a game yet. So that's why the strategy is the strategy. So remember, it's very fluid. And that's why we do these updates. And I'm going to try to do one once a week so that we understand, unless something breaks, where we know where these kids are and where they're thinking. So, of course, thank you for listening to Locked on UConn as your first listen of the day. But for your second listen, go check out Locked on College Football Podcast. From NIL deals to never-ending conference realignment rumors, Spencer McLaughlin gets you ready for an exciting season on the gridiron. You can find the link to Locked on College Football in the description, so you don't need to search. Part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day. This has been another episode of Locked on UConn. I hope you had a fantastic Labor Day weekend. I hope everything is going well for you in your life. And remember, I'm asking you to stay locked in, stay connected, make sure that toughness meter is always rising. And as always, go Huskies.